Abba Father, you are welcome to our study of Galatians. We are in verse 10 of chapter 1. In our previous class, we looked at verse 9. As we have said before, so now say I again. If anyone preaches any other gospel to you than what you have received, let him be accursed. And now verse 10, for do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. So, there's a lot here I want to talk about. The Apostle Paul discussing this says, do I now persuade men or God? Why is Paul asking that? Because these Judaizers that used to follow him, the people that persecuted him and went everywhere he went to disorganize the work that he had done. One of their accusations against Paul was that he was a man pleaser. They claimed that the message that Paul was preaching or ministering, his goal was just to please men. And we're going to see this later as we discuss in this book, that that's a big deal because usually, up to this present day, one of the biggest accusations against grace preaching, all the ministering of the grace of God, the love of God, faith, righteousness, the new creation, one of the biggest accusations that is leveled against people that do that is that they're just trying to please men, that we are making it easy. And some people call it easy grace, sloppy agape, false grace, easy believism. There's so many things that people call this message that makes that says that you don't have to do anything to be pleasing to God. And Paul had to face this accusation all the time, because the Judaizers would come in and say, no, Paul is just trying to please you. He's watering down the gospel so that you don't have to do anything. This message of not having to do anything is a false message. It's a false grace. It is hyper grace. These are the terms that people use to ridicule this message. And this was the accusations that came against Paul, that he was watering down the gospel, because he was telling people that they did not have to obey the commandments, they did not have to obey the law, they did not have to do something, they did not have to acquire something. And so they accused Paul of watering down the message and of preaching a false message. So this is what Paul is answering to. He's saying, am I now seeking to please men? Am I seeking the favor of men or of God? Is my ministry to please men, or my ministry is to please God? See, this is what he's having to answer to, because this is the question that we have to answer when you are going out to preach the grace of God. Is your goal to please men, or is your goal to please God? Because if your goal is to please men, then automatically you will water down the message. You will always tell people what they want to hear, so that they can be happy with you. The interesting thing is that actually the people that are preaching legalism are the ones that are trying to please men, because people want to be told what to do. People want law. People want commands. And so if you're giving them commands and you're telling them how rotten they are and how angry God is with them, people will most likely respond positively to you. If you go to most churches that are full of legalism and law, you will find them full of people and nobody service. But then if you go to this place where they're talking about the love of God and the goodness of God and the grace of God, you will not find so many people there, because it's funny that people want to be condemned. They want to be told that they have curses. They want to be told that God is not happy with them. And so, on the contrary, the ones who are men pleasers are the ones that are preaching this stuff that we know that is wrong and that is old covenant mindset. But Paul is accused of trying to please men by watering down the message and being a man pleaser. And that is an accusation that is coming. They would say, oh no, Paul is just telling you half of the story. The truth is, you also need to be circumcised. You also need to obey the law. You also need to literally, basically live like Jews. And Paul is not telling you that because he knows that you will be happy. Paul is not telling you that because he knows that he wants to carry your favor. Paul is not telling you the truth, and this was their accusation against him. So Paul is saying, just look at what I've said before. If anybody is preaching any other message than what I've preached to you, let him be accursed. In other words, if Paul is answering them, his question would be, from the way I have spoken, do I look like I'm trying to buy favor from anybody? I have just pronounced a double curse there, a double anathema when anybody was preaching any other message. So I've just said that my message is the only message that needs to be preached. So does that sound like a man pleaser? Does a man pleaser come with such an absolute stand and say it's either my message or no message? You know, you can't accuse a person like that of being a man pleaser because he's really strong. But then Paul continues, in fact, and here he says, am I striving to please men? The KJV said that, or do I seek to, do I not persuade men, oh God, or do I seek to please men? He's saying, do I seek to please men? Is my message for pleasing men? Am I in the ministry to please people? Have I started to preach with a goal, with the intention of pleasing people? And as a minister, you have to ask that question. Why am I ministering? Is it to please people? Do I want people to be happy with what I'm saying? Am I seeking to please men, or am I seeking to please God? Am I seeking to have people happy with me, or am I seeking to please God? Is it men that are going to approve of me, or is it God that needs to approve of me? Do I need the favor of men, or do I need the favor of God? And you have to answer that question, because then that determines what you minister, how you minister it. Are you willing to minister what is contrary to the established view? Are you willing to minister what is contrary to what is the accepted doctrine? Can you go against the tide and share the truth of the gospel? It is a scandal, because you see the gospel is scandalous by nature. So are you willing to share the scandal of the gospel unequivocally, or are you going to try to balance it with law so that you placate people that may not be happy with you or happy with this message, especially the Judaizers and the law-abiding, the Mosaic law-abiding so-called believers? So those are questions that Paul is asking these people, and of course they are rhetorical, because he's contradicting their accusation against him. He's saying, I am not here to win friends, I am not here to make people happy with me. In Philippians 1:17, he speaks about how these people were proclaiming Christ out of selfish ambition rather than from pure motives. Because these people would, when he was jailed, they would go to these churches and preach the gospel to compete with Paul, or to share, to reach more people than Paul. And so Paul is like, well, they're preaching, but it's not out of pure motive, selfish ambition. But he says it's okay because they're still preaching Christ. Christ is getting preached. So you have to check your ambition. As somebody that is believing the gospel and sharing the gospel, which should be everybody that is watching me. You should not say, oh, that's for preachers. Everybody needs to be sharing the gospel in your circle, with whoever you talk to. But you have to check your ambition. Why am I sharing this? Why am I sharing? Am I seeking to please men or God? Am I the servant of men or the servant of men? In fact, it says, if I was still trying to please men, I would not be a born servant of Christ. Now, notice here it says still trying to please men. Still means that there's a history. It means that there's a previous, it means that there's a time when Paul was pleasing men. But then he says, now, am I still trying to do that? So the question then we have to ask is, when was Paul pleasing men? When was Paul trying to please men? That was when he was a Pharisee under the law. Like I've said, this is an interesting contradiction, because the people that minister the law, the people that minister legalism, interestingly, are the ones who are actually trying to please men. The Pharisees who talk about this observance of laws and talk about how awesome they are and how they have tithed mint and some cumin and how they have done all of this stuff and how many steps they have walked. They are the ones who are men pleasers. And when we are, this is interesting because whenever we are presenting standards for people to obey, we are men pleasers. Whenever we are teaching a message that has to do with people obeying laws so that they feel better about themselves and so that they feel that they are righteous because they have prayed a certain amount of time and fasted a number of days and read a certain number of chapters of the Bible and done all of this stuff, and so because of that they feel that they're qualified. This is pleasing me. In fact, when you are trying to fulfill the law in order to please God, what you're actually doing is pleasing yourself, because after you've done all that you've done, you feel that you're deserving, you feel that you are worthy, you are pleased with yourself, you are pleased with your performance. And anybody that has attempted to obey the law and has done some obedience knows what I'm talking about, because there's that feeling you have of fulfillment, that feeling of you have that, okay, I've accomplished it, I've been faithful, I've obeyed this commandment. And this is what the Pharisees did. And Paul says this is trying to please men. It's trying to please yourself, to massage your religious ego and feel that you've given enough, you've fasted enough, you've prayed enough, you've served enough, you've submitted enough, you've done enough. And this is wrong. It says, if I did that, if I was still trying to do that, like I used to when I was a Pharisee, if I was still trying to do that, then I would not be a bond servant of Christ. It says, if I was still doing that, then that would mean right now I am not a bond servant of Christ. What is a bond servant? A bond servant or a slave. The KJV, let me see what the KJV calls it here. He said, I should not be the servant of Christ. Okay? So, but the word that Paul used there was not just a servant, it was a bond servant or a slave. A bond slave. So there was a difference between the slave and the bond slave, or between the servant and the bond servant. The servant is somebody that you hire. Today we would call them an employee. Somebody that you hire and you pay for working for you. But a slave was different. A slave was somebody that that was basically your property. So the Romans would of course take young Jewish men and conscript them as their servants, and sometimes pay them peanuts to serve them and do work for them. But then when we came to a slave, of course, you know that a slave is somebody that you own, somebody that you have bought or paid for. They are unwilling. It's involuntary, but they have nothing to do. Probably they were a prisoner of war or something like that, or their parent had a debt, or they had a debt they could not pay, so they were sold to pay the debt. That was a slave. But then a bond slave, this was different. This was the person that was bound to you as your slave, willingly. So sometimes the way that one became a bond slave was if somebody was a slave and then served their time, and then their time ran out for being a slave, which meant they had to be released. If they said, no, I want to be with you, I do not want to go anywhere, I want to be your bond slave, bound to you, I don't want to be released, I don't want to be bought out or sold up, I want to stay here forever. They are a willing slave, they are a willing servant, they are a voluntary slave. They give them their life completely over to you. They submit completely over to your lordship. They commit themselves wholly, fully to you. They have nowhere else to go. They yield to you 100%. That is what is called a bond slave. This is not somebody that you are enslaving by force. This is not somebody that is at your home because they don't have an option, because they can't run away, because they'll be killed. No, this is somebody that can run away, can leave, you've offered them freedom, and they've said, no, I don't want to go, I want to be here, I want to serve you for the rest of my life. My life belongs to you, I am yours fully. This is a bond slave or a bond servant. So Paul is saying that if I was still trying to be a man pleaser, living under the law, preaching the Lord, doing all of the stuff, then I would not be a born slave of Jesus. But now, because I am a born slave of Jesus, in other words, I have sold myself out completely to Jesus. I have presented my body to Him as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. I belong to Jesus. All of me is for Jesus. All of me belongs to Jesus. All of me, I have nowhere else to go. I have nothing else to do. I am completely sold out, given over to Jesus. This is what Paul is saying, that my entire life, my entire existence, my entire everything about me is Jesus. Jesus is my very life right now. This is what Paul is saying, that this is what it would mean for him to be a born slave. He's saying that I belong to Jesus completely. I am no longer trying to please men. I am no longer trying to do stuff, but now I am fully under the lordship of Jesus. I'm totally available to Jesus. Jesus is my Lord. Jesus is my God. Jesus is everything. Jesus is my life. Now, how many of us can say that we are totally surrendered, totally committed to Jesus? Most of us cannot. We have to do some more work of committing and yielding to and surrendering fully, completely to Jesus and His love and His grace, and giving ourselves over to God 100%. So this is something that we have to bear as we ponder this. So let me again read this and say, this is Paul saying, I am not seeking to be politically correct, for do I now persuade men, O God, or do I seek to please men? For if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. We are not in the ministry to please men. We are not in the ministry for political correctness. We are not attempting to be politically correct and to say what people want to hear in this generation today. We are not saying what people's ears are itching for. We are not saying what is pleasing to people. We are ministering what is pleasing to God. We are sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ without fear or favor. We are sharing that which they may not agree with, but we are sharing that which is the true gospel. And this is a call to all of us who have been called into the ministry of the gospel, that we do not do it as men pleasers. We do not do it to buy the favor of men. We do not do it to please men. We do not do it to persuade men. We do not do it to grow statistically, to have big numbers, to have so many people liking us. No, we are committed to the true gospel, and we are born servants of God, Jesus Christ, and we share, we teach, we preach what He teaches us and what He shows us as the truth of the gospel. Even if nobody else is saying it, even if there's a few people saying it, even if there's so many people that are contrary to what you're saying, if it is the truth, you stay on it, you share it, you teach it, you do what you ought to do, and you do not back down and back off. This is the mandate that we have from God. For do I now persuade men, O God, or do I seek to please men? For if I yet please men, I should not be the servant of Christ, the born slave of Christ, because my mission is to please Christ and not men. So this is verse 10. I would have gone into verse 11, but there's so much here in verse 11 and 12 that needs to have its own time. I think I will come back in our next class and we shall do verse 11 and verse 12 in our study of the book of Galatians. So thank you for studying with me. You are blessed with all blessings. Shalom.